Pastor Hank, she said it, targeted terrorism. I don't understand why it's so difficult to get this right, but it is what it is. Your thoughts, Pastor Hank?
Well, I think Rick Green had said something very important, and that is, you know, the previous administration, they were so busy on opening the borders, they weren't busy about protecting the people who have a rightful place here as citizens of the United States of America. And so what it's done is it's brought in people who, you know, they're carrying a spirit with them. And you can find it in Ezekiel 28, where it talks about Lucifer, the devil, when he fell. It talks about violence was found in him, even though it uses the word terror. And to Dutch's point, we, the Flashpoint Army, but the Christians, we need to rise up and begin to say, not in our country. We are not going to allow this. We are the most powerful agent, the praying church, who exercises their God-given and from the court of heaven right to say, no, not on our watch, not in our city or our country. I think that's very important. But I do want to say this. You know, as I was listening to Caroline Leavitt's statement there, I think we're the American people, Gene, are getting tired. And even with this administration, it's this. They talk transparency. I get it. But let's not just say we're going to prosecute these people. Let's follow through. So I think there's two messages that have to be sent. Number one, there has to be a message sent to the American people that they are, in fact, this administration, going to carry out what they're saying. No more politics here. No more getting and be the director of the FBI and say, we're going to do this, and then you don't do it. Follow through. That's the first message. The American people need it. It'll help us in the midterms and going forward. Secondly, and lastly, send a message to these thugs that think they can come into our country and do this. Matthew 12:29 says, the principle, bind the strong man and you will spoil his goods. If we don't get tough on people and send a message and bind the strong man and send a strong armed message, they will think they can do it again. Last example, Ronald Reagan. He went to Muammar Gaddafi and said, just watch. And in a few hours, I'm telling you, Muammar Gaddafi never raised his head again. And I think that's the message we have to send twofold.
Absolutely. Let me read this, and then I'm going to go to Lance here. This is the Justice Department. Here's what they had to say, Lance. No American should experience violence motivated by hatred based on their faith or national origin. And the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice will act swiftly and decisively to bring the perpetrators of such crimes to justice. There can be zero tolerance for such acts in our great nation. That's Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. You know, Lance, I agree with Hank on this. This is great to say, but we do need to see the action on the other side of that.
Well, let's get a little more specific. Companies that employ illegals whose visas have been already expired should be fined, and the U.S. government should hold them in contempt of some statute that is in order here. For instance, a now deleted but archived LinkedIn account believed to belong to Solomon shows him working as an accountant at Veros Health in Sentinel, Colorado for 6 months last year when he was illegal. They hired him knowing he was illegal. Solomon also worked as an Uber driver and passed the company's eligibility requirements, which includes supposedly a criminal background check. Therefore, I would propose that the illegals that are here have to make a living doing something, and therefore companies should be held responsible if they are not complying with diligent background checks and deliberately employing people, in some cases, who they know are illegal because they're sympathetic to the left-wing platform. There should be consequences for the companies.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Rick. I mean, how can we enforce something like that? How do we do that other than outing the companies like this that do that?
Well, that is one of the things we should do. We need a Robbie Starbuck version of employing illegals, just like he's done with DEI and CRT. Yep. Hey, couple of quick thoughts. First of all, when you were playing Caroline Leavitt, I was thinking, you know how Sirius and some of those they have a whole channel for Elvis or a whole channel for the Beatles or whatever. We need a Caroline Leavitt channel. You could listen to that all day long, man. She's that good. But the second and more serious, we were talking about, I think it was Dutch that was saying how important it is to mobilize the prayer warriors. I was just talking to our mutual friend, Congressman Barry Loudermilk, and he's got this book, And Then They Prayed. He did it like 10 years ago, and he's releasing a new one July 4th. But he was telling me some stories of prayer throughout our history. I know the ones from the founding era, but I didn't know a lot of these throughout our history. And Gene, I think that fits tonight. I think this is one of those things where we have got to rally the war room. I think that's going to be one of the most important things you've ever done with Flashpoint, emphasizing the importance of that prayer. I don't think you stop 2 million gotaways from terrorist attacks without prayer. There's just no police force or FBI or anything that could stop all of them. But prayer can. With a spiritual covering, it can. It certainly reduce the number. So anyway, I just think that's vitally important. But back to your issue on the employee thing, I mean, you've got to have some sort of check. States need to start passing this. Even if the feds don't, states need to start requiring this. If the feds don't, the feds could absolutely enforce this. We saw the numbers, all the Social Security checks, all the Medicare. We were putting these people up in the Ritz-Carlton, Gene. There was no effort to prevent these people from working, let alone paying for their hotels and their food. So thankfully that's stopping thanks to Donald Trump. But then that next step is what you're suggesting, or what Lance suggested, and what you're asking, and that is actually requiring the employers to prove citizenship. Otherwise, they are held accountable.
Amen. Amen. All right. So speaking of that, if you're not a part of the War Room, you'll be part of go fparmy.com/war room. Go sign up right now. You can do that while we're. Let me go to you, Dutch. I feel like you have another comment there on this.
Well, I just agree with everything that's being said. We need to do what we can governmentally. We need to stop them in every way we can. We need to make sure we're behind the president. As I said in the Post tomorrow, we need to be praying for the president, that God would give he and the conservatives in Congress and Trump's team wise strategies consistently. They need incredible wisdom as they try to turn this nation. We can pray that into them. We can supply spiritually what they need, and we can take authority over this spirit of violence and rage and anger that has infiltrated our nation. And I know we can stop some of it, if not all of it.
Disney World, oh, darn it. Look at this. Walt Disney World News today, the worldwide leader in Disney park news, Disney laying off hundreds of employees, entertainment, corporate finance, across TV, film. You know, what do you think here, Pastor Hank? Is this what we're seeing? Is still the fallout from America responding to the crazy leftist ideologies that Disney World and Disney has been proponent of?
Well, Gene, hopefully Disney has realized that they went goofy. That's my first comment. Okay, that's a Lance Wallnau joke. But anyway, no, here's the point. I do think that the only way to send these places a message is when we, the people, rise up and we say, we are not going to tolerate this in our country. And we're certainly not going to tolerate when you touch the children. And when we do that, it begins to be reflected in the almighty dollar. And that is the best message that you can send. And I do, in fact, believe that it is happening. Remember in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we stood there with Lance and Mario and myself and with you, Gene, and God spoke prophetically, and he said, woke is going to go broke. And that is a great example of what the Lord was saying.
Yeah, and this is the fourth round of these layoffs. I mean, it's been devastating. I don't know if you guys were with us. A lot of you say you've been watching since day one. If you have been, then you saw when we prayed against this and we brought to you what they were doing, what they were saying, and the videos about their gayness that they were trying to push out there, and their stock fell overnight. Lance, it seems to me that someone would eventually get the message, but Disney's got deep pockets. They continue to push this same liberal, pro-LGBTQ agenda.
Well, at the end of the day, Gene, they're going to go the same way as other corporations because they have shareholders, and shareholder equity has a voice. And the ideologues that have wormed their way into that, I was going to say Mickey Mouse operation, but that would be like Hank doing Goofy. They're running a Mickey Mouse operation now, and they need to. And I think that what happens is the CEO is responsible for delivering profit. And if they have a choice between championing ideology or making money, the money is going to prevail. So the layoffs, and you're going to see, they've already made changes, Gene. We should also recognize they had cartoons coming out. They changed the script. They had programs they cut. they're reading it and they're realizing they've got a branding crisis. Walt Disney was a genius, like Donald Trump, at brand.
Yeah.
And what Disney did was they tarnished the brand. And that's that's a Bud Light moment. And they still haven't recovered, but they're getting the message.
They are getting sort of like you remember New Coke when they tried that? That was a failure. Yes, I'm equating Disney to Coca-Cola. Yes, Rick.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I hate cheering against Mickey. I mean, Walt Disney, as Lance said, just brilliant guy, just incredible story, all the things he did for all of us. We grew up, with good stuff from Disney that actually reinforced patriotism and reinforced good values and the good guy wins and all those things. And it just hurts, man. But we've seen them go so woke, as Hank said. You better keep. I mean, when you go after the kids, you've crossed the line. It's worse than a Bud Light moment, and I think that's why they haven't recovered yet. We saw that thing that we cherished and that we loved and that had been a blessing to us and to, frankly, our kids, and then we saw them trying to turn our grandchildren into these, destroy their lives. And so I think it's possibly irreparable. I haven't seen yet the competition, right? I mean, Daily Wire's done some kids programming. I mean, there's a few people out there that are trying, but they are the 800-pound gorilla. They could still save themselves, but I think it's going to have to be more radical than what they've done. They can't just back off of some scripts. They're going to have to become pro-patriotism again, pro-American again, pro-good values again. And if they do that, the mighty dollar that they're after could actually be restored for them, and then we get good programming again.
It's true. And this is where, this Seven Mountains, Lance, talks about everywhere. That's why we've got to take it. We've got to take that mountain, the gate of influence on top of that mountain, and the media mountain. But listen, they're not the only ones. How many of you let your kids watch Sesame Street? Well, look at what they're saying. On our street, everyone is welcome. Together, let's build a world where every person and family feels loved and respected for who they are. Happy Pride Month. Click. Turn it off. Dutch, Sesame Street used to teach the ABCs and the numbers and letters, and I don't understand how we went from that government funded. They should pull all government funding, because why aren't they pushing? If they're pushing that, then they should be pushing traditional Bible values if they're government funded. But this is not what's happening. This is crazy talk.
The left is doing what the Dems are doing. They're just doubling down on stupid. And we have underestimated the silent majority in America. They have. They've thought that America was okay with some of this foolishness. Moms and dads were okay with it. That the majority of American people were okay with it, just because they weren't saying anything. But Americans at some point rise up. And there are still more who don't want this foolishness, craziness, than there are who do. The Democrats have found that. And now these businesses are finding it, and more are going to find it. And these TV programs are going to find it also. We are going to see righteousness and common sense prevail in some of these areas. I guarantee it.
That's right. All right, let me show you this from Victory News today, this clip about this very thing and what's going on with Sesame Street. Watch.
Let's talk a little bit about light and darkness. Sesame Street produced a skit with a gay man introducing kids to fashion and makeovers. So is this an example of why our congressmen need to end funding PBS with our tax dollars?
This is not the Sesame Street of my childhood. When PBS uses tax dollars to push social agenda, it crosses the line from education into state-sponsored propaganda. This isn't free speech. It's government-funded messaging, and that's a direct violation of the principles of free and independent press. It establishes government-controlled messaging. And Congress has to stop sending our money to PBS. Anybody that relies on PBS and taxpayer dollars ought to have their credibility as an educator become suspect.
As well said. I agree with that. They shouldn't be funded. We should demand funding pulled. And, Pastor Hank, this is why you must, I want to encourage you here publicly, you must keep doing your Captain Zepto and the animation stuff and all that you're doing. I want to encourage you. You got to keep doing that. Keep pushing. I know it's expensive, but thank you for taking a step of faith and getting it out there.
Sure. Gene, listen, I've put some of that on pause, unfortunately, because I don't have the money. And yet I watch these tax-paying money going towards sexual exploitation on, Sesame Street. I mean, the street used to be straight. Now it's crooked, it's perverse. No, to your point, I'm not giving up, but I can only do so much. Animation is very, very expensive, and I have 3 that are ready to go, but it just has to be paid for. And so, I think we have to be, as parents, how serious do we want to be about recapturing a generation for children? And if we're not serious about it, then those that are about exploiting our children, like Sesame Street, Disney, they're going to be the voice and the influence for our children. And guys like us have to continue to strive just to try to make it happen. I want to tell you something, those of you that are watching, check out my stuff. It is as good as Disney and Sesame Street, and I think it's hilarious, and I think it's the new generation, a new wine that's coming forth for children, and I need your help, so thank you, Gene, for mentioning it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But there is good news. When I say good news, I mean, you're making a difference. Like we talked